What's going on, everybody? It's that time again, the AllSooners Podcast, episode 133 on this wonderful Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. 38 days until Oklahoma plays UTEP September 3rd at the stadium. Josh Callaway in Oklahoma City, Ryan Chapman and more, John Hoover in Tulsa. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Fighting the heat, man. Waiting for that cold snap to come so it can be 89 degrees over the weekend.
The high on
a little bit of rain.
Yeah, the high on Sunday is like 90, so it's coming.
Yeah, but get all your yard work in later this week, I guess. Maybe Sylvester Stallone should have hung around for this weekend instead of when he was here to record Tulsa King.
Can you pick a worse summer for these guys to have to deal with Schmitty for the first time than this summer? Like, holy moly. And all the guys, when they just finished like their summer stuff the other day, and they all were tweeting like, we survived. It was like every player saying, we messed with Schmitty in the summer and lived to tell the tale. So it's
going around.
Big time. So survival for sure. As summer workouts in the books, fall camp around the corner now. And that's where, I was kind of thinking this is kind of our last truly off-season show, really in a sense, because fall camp starts next week, a week from tomorrow, next Thursday. The Sooners report, start practicing, all that good stuff, and the season's right around the corner from there. So this is kind of our last full-blown dead of summer show, really. So it's kind of crazy that we're here. The season has almost arrived. Oklahoma and UTEP's right around the corner. We're getting like jersey reveals for season openers and stuff like that is pouring in. So it's starting to feel like we're getting somewhere in terms of some games coming up, and we're getting there very, very soon. Oklahoma and UTEP just about 5.5 weeks away from today. Pretty unbelievable. We'll pick up kind of where we left off really last week in terms of July continues to be massive for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. It's one of the biggest months of OU recruiting maybe ever. I mean, it just continued to pack it in. They vaulted themselves up the rankings. They added another one to the list earlier this week in cornerback Josiah Wagner from Spanaway Lake High School in Spanaway, Washington. It's a top 25 cornerback, depending on where you look, obviously, maybe a little higher. 4-star, 5'11", 170 pounds. Fun to watch. Athlete, like a lot of these guys, goes both ways in high school, plays receiver as well, just can make things happen, got good ball skills. Seems to have really good instincts. He seems like he's always around the ball, making plays on the football, can lay the hit when he needs to. Another big gift for Oklahoma here, and it's their 17th commit. And like I said, they vault themselves up number 8 now in 247 Sports' rankings. July continues to be big for Oklahoma.
I can just comment on the highlight videos that I've seen of his. And he is a guy that, as a 5'11", 170-pound high school cornerback, that's what he played at last year in high school as a junior. 5'11", 170. He's not afraid of contact. He's not afraid to come up and force the run. And here's the thing, guys, is he recognizes that it's a run play very quickly. It's not hard to determine, but as a 5'11", 170-pound cornerback, to react as quickly as he does is pretty impressive. And I'm going to tell you that from my perspective what I'm talking about here. When I was a sophomore in high school, I was about 5'11" and about 170 pounds. And the coaches would, there'd be here comes a running play, right? Hoover, get up and force the run. Stop covering your receiver. Coach, I thought they were throwing deep, man. I thought it was a halfback pass. I had to get back. I didn't want to tackle that 6 foot, 215-pound running back. So I was getting back I didn't want to get beat over the top. Hoover, it's a running play. They've run the ball 45 out of the last 46 plays. Get up there and force the run. You don't have that problem with Josiah Wagner. He sees it immediately, and he is instinctively going and trying to make a tackle. He's not chicken like I was at 5'11", 170 pounds. He's physical, and he's got good ball skills. You can see it. When he makes a play on the ball, it can be impressive.
Yeah, I've never been 5'11", so I can't relate to that. But he's one of those guys that when you talk about ball skills, you see it a ton, right? If he's this athletic, he's going to play both sides of the football in high school. So he's got really the first – I can't remember if it's the first or second play on his highlight reel. It's just a really excellent goes up, high points the football as the defensive back on that play. So you've got that. And, yeah, I think kind of what you're speaking to, who we were so used to with the last staff, right? It was you had to be this tall and you had to run at least this fast to play corner. And while Oklahoma fans were into that for sure, because the era of the 5'9" corners was not what you wanted, this staff has already shown to be a little bit different. If you guys remember all the way back to spring ball, when we're talking to Jaden Davis and Kenai Walker about kind of what the conversations that Jay Valai had with them, Jay Valai is a guy who played corner, and he's able to coach these guys and say, if you're 5'9", you can't play like you're 6'2". If you're 6'2", you can do different things. So he's got what you need, which is the intangibles as far as what he can do, play recognition. He's got the athletic prowess as far as speed and big enough. His frame's big enough. And then, like you said, he's got that physicality that this Oklahoma team wants. Who of you weren't able to make it down to as many as, Josh and I were at, but every single time we had a practice viewing session, all you heard from Jay Valai was, I need violence, I need physicality. Those are the two things he has to have out of his corners. I don't feel like Wagner's going to be hearing that too much from Jay Valai.
Number 2 player in the state of Washington is Wagner, and his Final Four, it's Texas, Cal, and Oregon. So, Brent Venables and this defensive staff went into the West Coast, the far West Coast, Washington, and pulled a guy out of Pac-12 country who had Pac-12 schools in his Final Four, had Texas in his Final Four, and they won. That's a good recruiting win for Oklahoma there to go head-to-head with those guys and get them out of their backyard. And they continue. This has been this recruiting class is all over the map. And speaking to that is the fact that Derek LeBlanc, who we talked about before, he's committing this week. All signs point to that being an Oklahoma kid. He's a Florida kid. So this July continues to be huge for Oklahoma. And it's just unbelievable because this is what we talked about, going back in May and April, that Oklahoma fans, there was some panic, some worry. This recruiting class is not looking good. We're plummeting. We don't have that many commits, all that stuff. And we talked about on this show, you just have to kind of recalibrate your brain and the recruiting calendar with this new regime. It's going to be bigger later in the summer, maybe even into the season, just because of the way that Brent Venables does it. And you're seeing that now. July, what a massive month, and probably at least one more coming in LeBlanc. It's pretty incredible. It really has been.
Yeah. If you look at 17 commits, 4 are from the state of Texas, one's from McAlester, Oklahoma. The rest are from everywhere else. I'll just go down the list. It's pretty impressive. Kansas City, Lee Summit, 2 of them. Tampa, Washington, North Carolina, Florida, Colorado, Washington, New Jersey, Virginia, Nebraska. They're recruiting nationally at a very high level. They're not recruiting nationally because they don't want Texas kids or can't get Oklahoma kids. They're recruiting nationally because those are kids that want to come to Oklahoma. So that's been impressive.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you kind of touched on a little bit there, Josh, is if this is the recruiting model you want to go with, which, again, it's a little nervy because you don't get the numbers in the class as soon as everywhere else, but it's worked for Clemson. In a year like this is almost dream scenario, right? If LeBlanc hops aboard, then you're at 18. If a guy like some of the in-state kids, Jacoby Johnson, if he makes that call before the season, then you're at 19 kids with traditional class numbers and all that stuff. That means that this staff, for the rest of the year, you're keeping those guys aboard, which, again, the whole philosophy is if they're not committing until they're ready, you should be having lower numbers of decommitments, so you feel better about that. But also, the staff isn't having to scramble and hunt down 9 guys between now and signing day, right? Like, they can really hone in and say, this is 1A, this is 1B. We're going to recruit the hell out of 10 to 12 guys, hope that 5 of those jump in and you've got your class. So is it always going to work out like that? No, I'm sure there'll be years where Oklahoma rolls into the season with 12 commits and they've got a lot of work to do. But as far as year one, when Brent Venables has no head coaching experience to recruit off of, to say, this is what it looks like when I am the head coach, this is almost a dream scenario for what they're going to have to do as far as closing the class down throughout the rest of the regular football season.
Yep, so we'll stay plugged into it. AllSooners.com, certainly the place to be to make sure you're up to date on the latest commits, latest top 5s, top 4s, highlight tapes of all the guys. They're all there for you. On AllSooners.com, huge July, and it looks like it's going to keep going, so you're going to want to keep up with us as we roll on what's been just a truly incredible recruiting surge for Oklahoma after, dirt was thrown on them 2 months ago. Been pretty impressive to watch. As for the current team, we mentioned the season's coming up. We're getting close. We're getting somewhere. The calendar's almost about to shift to August. We're in the final days of July, which means Watch List season continues to be in full swing. We talked about this a little bit last week. We had Dylan Gabriel and Eric Gregg on their big watch list. We've gotten several more, so some housekeeping here we'll touch on real quick. Marvin Mims, Braden Willis, David Agwebu, Anton Harrison, and Michael Turk just this morning, all of them put on their respective award watch lists. Nobody on Jim Thorpe, if you want to poke a hole there. So no defensive back, no Woody Washington, no Key Lawrence, but Oklahoma generally has been pretty fruitful here. Any takeaways from watch list season over the last week and a half or so?
Yeah, the Nagurski came out as well yesterday. Nobody on that from Oklahoma. So I would think that those guys are, putting up that Baker Mayfield write it down wall, where you write down all the things that kind of piss you off there next to your locker. I would think that those guys are motivated by that. We talked about being voted second and nobody on the first team All Big 12 or second team All Big 12, or I guess first team All Big 12 offense and defense for the preseason and the media poll. And they downplayed it appropriately at Big 12 media days. They said, things like, we got to go out and prove it. Sure. Yeah, I get that. But behind closed doors, those guys are motivated by that stuff. So I would think that the defense, especially with all those new defensive coaches and Brent Venables as your leader, those guys are extremely motivated by this awards watch season.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't really mean a whole lot because in every single release you get, it's like, by the way, anyone in college football is eligible for this award. Like, you don't have to be on the watch list. But there have been some interesting things. I was talking with Hoove yesterday about the Butt Kiss watch list and how I don't mean this as a shot at David Agwebu. Don't take it that way. But when you talk about Oklahoma linebacker, if you're going with the guy that has returning production to put on some of these lists, you'd go with Deshaun White. Well, he was left off the preseason All Big 12 team, left off the Butt Kiss watch list. If you're going with who was the sexy high upside pick to put on there, Danny Stutzman is all the rage with the fan base. A lot of people like it. So it was just funny that Agwebu isn't kind of either one of those guys, and he's the one that is on that list, despite the fact that one of the first questions he got this spring was like, hey, are you moving to defensive end or are you going to stick it out at linebacker? You know what I mean? It's just some of how this stuff works is funny. So it'll be great motivation for a guy like David Agwebu to be like, yes, I'm on that list. I deserve to be on that list. I want to keep being on that list when the semifinalists and all that comes out. And for his other cohorts in the linebacker room, they'll be like, well, I want a piece of that action too. So you see that at a bunch of different positions. It's just, the ebbs and flows of watch list season.
And David Agwebu, guys, at 6'4", 250, and we've seen some of the plays that he can make. Now it's just a matter of getting out there and being consistent and making those plays. He'll have a spot. Listen, he's got the talent, the ability to be a finalist or even win the Butkus Award. He's that good. So he deserves to be on this list, if for no reason other than potential. He's got to put it all together. I think he's got, if I'm not mistaken, I wrote a story during the summer, I think 2 career starts. That's your Butkus Award candidate. I mean, I'm with Ryan. I probably would have nominated Deshaun White, knowing he's got no chance to win, as a 6 foot, 220-pound linebacker, Mike linebacker. But David Agwebu, if he gets in there and does play hard, does play consistent, does turn around and play, deliver game-changing plays like he has, then all of a sudden maybe he does have a chance to win.
Yeah, David Agwebu, one of those guys, one of those big candidates for Brent Venables, Jerry Schmidt, this staff jump guys. He's definitely in that party. So going to be fun to see what he looks like. I assume we'll get to see some practices like we did in the spring. So he's going to be one of those ones like, okay, after summer workouts and stuff, what is he? Because he was a big, scary dude before. So I'm excited to see what that looks like, after a full summer.
9 career starts, by the way. Looked it up. 9 career starts for David Agwebu. So quite a bit more than what I thought.
Yeah, he was a big, scary dude that could get out there and in space at Bedlam a couple of years ago, make like an incredibly athletic interception. If I'm picking a highlight reel for one of these guys, I want to watch David Agwebu. It's just funny how it all works out, right? When you've got so much uncertainty, I mean, who do you put forward? Who do you not? There's no right, wrong answer. Just interested to see kind of how all these guys respond to that as we get to talk to them over fall camp here that's coming up next week.
Also, we buried the league with Watch List season. There was nobody on the Lou Groza. Zach Schmidt snubbed. So there you go. I think he won 1-for-1 career kicks, the Western Carolina game. I think that's the only time. I could fact check that. But
wasn't it also like a 40-yarder or something? Like, it wasn't like a.
It was kind of long. Yeah. Yeah, because it was like even the backup kicker can drain some deep ones. He's on a good run of kickers.
Just keep him away from the burritos.
Avoid burritos at all costs. At all costs. So there you go. That's Watch List season. That continues to roll on. There's a few more still straggling out there. AllSooners.com will keep you up to date on who gets placed where in the last few days here of Watch List season. All right, wrapping up first segment here. We've begun a new series on AllSooners. The first half of it is done. It's breakout players. Guys we're just watching to have big years in 2022. Guys who haven't necessarily done it before, or because they were somewhere else, or just haven't had some playing time, or whatever. Myriad of reasons. We've done 5 of our 10, so I figured we could touch on our 5 real quick. I picked Marcus Stripling for my first pick. Who of you had 2? Ryan's had 1, and intern Ross had Marcus Major this morning. I'll say real quick about Marcus Stripling. Huge fan of him. What I just said about Aguebu, transferred to Stripling as well, as far as just one of those guys, Venables, Schmitty, all of that. You're just looking to be big because Stripling, the best game of his career was the Alamo Bowl, was the last game he played. He's only had 2 career starts, and that was one of them, Alamo Bowl, and he was awesome. Had a career high in tackles, wreaking havoc, multiple tackles for loss, seemed to just be around the ball all the time. Feels like his stock is really, really high. So he was my pick for breakout players this year. I have another one coming up later on in the week, but as far as the other 4, who you can dive into year 2, Ryan, you can dive into yours.
Yeah, my second breakout player had his best career game, also in the Alamo Bowl. Jalil Farouk caught 3 passes for 64 yards, breaking tackles, catching balls in traffic, running guys over, running through tackles and stuff like that. So I look for him to play, to kind of translate that confidence that he played with last December under Bob Stoops. And Cale Gundy calling plays. Remember that too. I look for him to translate that to Jeff Lebby's offense and be a really good third option, not just a guy who catches 14 passes or something like that. I think he's going to have a big year, catch 30, 35, 40 passes this year as a sophomore. And then my first breakout guy, he had one of the best games of the Sooners' most recent game, which was not the Alamo Bowl, which was the red-white games. Tawee Walker, the walk-on running back from Palomar College out in California. He's got a great story. He played a different position, played at a different high school, switched high schools, went to running back, went from running back to defensive back, went back to running back, sat out, went to prep school, sat out, worked a real job, sat out. He's got one of those Dominique Whaley feels to it. So, he ran with power and authority, confidence in that in the red-white game. The problem you get with Tawee Walker or that position in that game is they tend to, historically speaking, give a guy, one of the walk-ons, one of the guys that's down the depth chart a little bit, 12, 15, 18, 20 carries sometimes. And we think he's going to be great because he was great in the spring game.
Right.
He was only great in the spring game because they needed somebody to take up some snaps. So hopefully that's not the case with Tawee Walker. I'll tell you this, a lot of people have responded to my story on Twitter saying that this kid's the real deal. He's going to have a breakout season. Thank you for picking him because you're 100% right. He's got a lot of support on social media.
Yeah, I rolled with defensive side of the ball, Jordan Kelly. He's a guy that's been on campus since 2018, red-shirted, had a little injury stuff, so didn't really play a lot his whole first 2 years on campus. Last 2 seasons, he's been a big piece rotationally, and especially last year. I was always really impressed when he came in, and I thought he did a lot of really good stuff, even though it didn't always show up in the form of a tackle or a sack in the stat book. So he's a guy that when we talked to this spring, he had just kind of a different edge about him, understanding, hey, this is the year. I've got to get it going. I've been extra film session, extra lifts, all that stuff. Then Todd Bates, he said the same thing, that you can tell that Jordan Kelly gets it, that there's a different level of just intensity and understand that his time's running out here at Oklahoma. So you have that step up as far as Todd Bates, one of the best defensive tackle coaches in the country. Jordan Kelly talked about, I didn't think I could be coached like this. I didn't realize that. That's something that he kind of talked about. And so you get Schmitty back, you got Todd Bates back. And on top of that, hey, if Jalen Redmond, we know that he's struggled to just finish a full season, no fault of his own, but the injury problem is there. Jeffrey Johnson, He's transferred in from Tulane where his highs were really high, but he needs to find that consistency. Even if those two guys are awesome, all Big 12 guys, you need rotation. You need depth there at the heart of the defensive line. Todd Bates said they're looking for 3 to 6 guys that can play there. So he's a guy that can either take a spot or just be an awesome rotational piece. And I think that he'll be able to put it together and have a much better year this year, just as far as sacks, tackles, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And to put a bow on it with Ross's pick of Marcus Major, who was another guy who had a nice Alamo Bowl, didn't play a lot last year, kind of just a lost year for him, was academically ineligible for a while, and then came back, but then just had a hard time getting on the field. To tie that back into whose pick of Tawi Walker and to kind of tease one of my picks later on, that second running back spot is just up for grabs completely. I mean, any running back after Eric Gray is like a candidate to be picked for this because it's open. It's up there. There's a lot of carries that are just up for grabs. It's a competition. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Eric Gray is clearly a number one, but then after that, it's like we assume Marcus Major, but it's not a given by any means. And then after that, it's just a Javonte Barnes, all these young guys. So that's one of those interesting position battles. Watch and see how that shakes out in fall camp. So, yep, we'll have the other 5 of our breakout players each day on AllSooners, so be sure to keep up with that. I think Ryan's getting back in there tomorrow, and then I'm back on Friday. So we'll keep it rolling. We'll get all our picks. Ross gets back in there as well, and Who's got a couple more. So more breakout players for you on AllSooners.com. All right, we're going to take a timeout. We'll come back. NFL training camp is underway, so we're going to talk some pro ball. Our man Kyler Murray got paid, emphasis on paid, but it has some weird stipulations in it. We'll talk about that next on the AllSooners Podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at all_Sooners. Ryan's at Radio's Ryan. Who's at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We're a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Okay, going to look at some NFL here now in the second segment. Said it right before the break there. Kyler Murray got paid. So it's been a big topic of conversation throughout the offseason was kind of his relationship with the Arizona Cardinals. Were they going to trade him for a while? That was kind of a conversation. Are they willing to commit to him? They did. There's some weird, funky stuff in the contract. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, just the fact that he got this big extension, 5 years, $230 million. He's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league now, obviously. Big deal. I mean, obviously, Kyler, the Cardinals have committed to him long term. I mean, there you go. He's going to be part of Arizona, it looks like, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. But what does surprise me is if the Cardinals are going to be a franchise that is going to put weird little clauses in a guy's contract, your franchise quarterback's contract, one of those clauses ought to be said quarterback will not scrub his social media accounts of all mentions of the club, franchise, Arizona Cardinals, LLC.
His approach worked, clearly.
I mean, he got what he wanted, but at the same time, they dress it up with, okay, you can be our quarterback for $230 million if you study 4 hours a week outside of the building. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. He's got to do film study, and apparently he's got to do it on an iPad that's going to track his using the app and access to the facility and watching film. What? This is so weird. I was talking with Sam Mays yesterday on the Hoover and Mays show on the Sports Animal. He made a great point. He said that all his life, Kyler Murray has been better than the game of football. He's overwhelmed the game of football. This is a case where he's not physically overwhelming the game of football like he used to. And so now he's having to study and do the academic side of football for the first time in his life. And I said, yeah, a little bit like Vince Young. Vince Young was the best high school football player in the country for 4 years. Then he became the best college football player in the country for most of his 3 years at Texas. So he gets into the NFL, and guess what? Everybody's got the same type of ability that he does. All of a sudden, the academic side of things, the scholastic side of the game becomes more important, and Vince Young has a tough time catching up from that spot. So I don't know that Kyler is he's not academically behind anybody. I just don't know that he always had to apply himself because it just came so easy for him. It reminds me of Marcus Dupree. The game came so easy for Marcus that he didn't really have to apply himself in the weight room and in the nutrition room and in the training room. He was bigger, stronger, and faster than everyone from birth. So maybe that's there's something to that Kyler is, the team recognizes, listen, you're good, but you can be great if you apply yourself in these other areas.
And on top of that, yes, he's always been better than the game. He also last 3 years are the only time in his life that football's the only thing he's doing, right? Like, it's even when he's been better than the game, it's like, okay, I'm doing the football thing now. Now I got to go over to baseball. Now I'm coming back to football, all this stuff. It's like, obviously on a very different scale, but like, I was decent at high school because I could take standardized tests, which meant that I never had to learn how to study. And then you get to college and you actually have to digest all this stuff outside of class and learn how to study for tests, things like that. Like, that was an adjustment. So I think that that's something that Kyler Murray's going through. Now, the thing for Kyler, though, is that he also gave a New York Times interview last year where he basically bragged about, like, yeah, I've never had to do film study. So not sure that was the best move by him to just float that out there to the New York Times, but that'll get brought up as we've seen it over and over and over again. For Kyler, it's two things. Clearly, if he can get that in order, he'll be great. Also, if he can just stay healthy, which, like, that's on Keim and the Cardinals to put an offensive line in front of him. All that, like, that's not a Kyler thing. That's a Cardinals thing. So if those two can marry that and go forward, then they're good. I just want to know if Cliff has to be the one that has to sit there and monitor Kyler on the iPad.
It's so weird. It's 4 hours per game week of independent study without the distraction of video games or TV or anything like that. Like, I don't know how that works. I don't know how you prove that he wasn't also watching TV or playing video games or something at the time. Maybe they have fancy ways to monitor that kind of thing. But I mean, it's an embarrassing look, I think, all around. I think it makes Kyler look bad, obviously, and I think it makes the Cardinals look bad too. Like, you're worried about his study habits. You just gave him this contract. It's like, it's funky to me. I don't know why the Cardinals would do this. If you're that worried about him not studying, then you probably just don't commit to him. Or if you do commit to him, maybe just trust him. You know what I mean? If you're gonna, I don't know. So I don't know. I don't love it for either side, really. I mean, like I said, it makes Kyle look bad for obvious reasons, and the Cardinals, I just think they're overstepping.
Which side of the camp did Ian Rappaport get his leak from? Was it Kyler and his agent, or was it the football team?
Well, considering the follow-up tweet was Kyler does 4 hours of study on his own anyway, I think that the leak was probably from the team, and then Kyler's agent was in his ear immediately like, yo, this makes Kyler look really bad. Because he followed that up like immediately of saying, Kyler does 4 hours of study on his own anyway, but they want to get it in writing or whatever. So,
weird.
Very weird. And the other weird part, the other weird aspect of it, which was certainly caught my eye, baseball guy, was that Kyler can't participate in any organized baseball activities at all or risk defaulting his guaranteed money, which is interesting because obviously Kyler is on record. He was with, I think it was with Pat McAfee before, saying, I'd like to play both if I could. Like, he hasn't just given up on ever trying to play baseball. He has said, I would love to try and play both at some point if I could. And obviously this isn't totally unheard of on either side. The Bucs did this with Jameis Winston, who played baseball in college. Whenever he signed with the Bucs as a rookie, they put in his contract, you can't do anything with baseball ever. But the other side of the coin is Russell Wilson does lots of stuff with baseball. He goes to spring training every year. When he was with the Seahawks, he would literally go to spring training, full uniform with the Rangers, and he went to the Yankees and would do drills and take BP and all that stuff every spring. So it's kind of the two ends of the spectrum here, but Kyler seemingly is giving up on any baseball dreams, which are kind of, it was a long shot he ever would anyway, but I think it felt like Kyler always liked to keep it as some leverage, that I could go do this at any time. He kind of gave it up.
Yeah, leverage is a good word. Imagine, though, if you're Kyler and, you're running around and your offensive line sucks and you get beat to hell, at some point you may want to reconsider and say, I proved myself football-wise. Before my athletic career is done, I think I want to go try professional baseball. And if you do that, you're going to want to stay sharp. You're going to want to stay involved, or at least have your eye on the future, right? But Cardinals, in their new contract provisions, are not allowing him to explore that part of it. So if he ever does do that, it's going to have to be cold turkey. He's just going to have to stop being a quarterback and go be a center fielder or something.
Yeah, end of that. But when you get $230 million guaranteed, I don't think $230 million, a lot of that guaranteed, about 160, I think it was guaranteed. Yeah, you'll be okay.
He made the right decision. Football versus baseball, right? I mean, there was a lot of people saying you guys are idiots baseball money is way bigger than football. Not if you're a quarterback. Not if you're a franchise quarterback. You get the baseball money. Baseball money's great, but if you get that franchise quarterback money, my man got almost $250 million. So, no, he made the right decision. All you baseball guys out there, sit down.
The baseball money, it can definitely be more. It's just more risky because football, he was gonna get paid in football. That was, I mean, obviously he ended up going number one, and we all felt like he was plenty good enough to get this second contract and all that. Baseball, if he's as good as he hopes to be, I mean, you're talking about Juan Soto just turned down 15 years, $450 million or whatever it was. I mean, there's the ceiling is higher, but the floor is much lower in baseball. It's much riskier, and he took the more safe route, and I don't think anybody could really argue with it. Obviously, he's had a great start to his career and is on that second contract. He did what Baker was unable to do, which was get the team to commit to him long term before having to play on his contract late in his rookie deal. So he avoided all that mess, and we'll see what happens this year. Obviously, Marquise Brown is there in Arizona now, so big things are expected from the Cardinals this year. NFL football right around the corner. We did mention training camp has begun for, I think, most of the teams, if not all at this point, here on Wednesday. So that means, obviously, all the OU rookies are off and running. They're all with their new team, getting off to good starts. I was curious, just kind of a way to tie it in with Kyler and the fact that the NFL started. Is there anybody in particular to your guys that you're paying attention to that needs to have a good camp / a good preseason to try and carve out a spot for themselves, or just, I don't know, who are you most interested in, maybe is a better way to ask it, just you guys to keep an eye on?
I'm Baker Mayfield, obviously, with Carolina, but now that Baker's not with the Browns anymore, the Browns have 3 former Sooners that I want to see, want to watch their career, Perion Winfrey and Isaiah Thomas especially.
Yeah.
Couple of defensive linemen who played next to each other a lot at Oklahoma are now going to be playing next to each other. Now, listen, the Browns are set at D-line. They've got Jadeveon Clowney on one side. He's getting a little bit long in the tooth in his career. And then Myles Garrett on the other side. I mean, those guys are dominant. How much does Perion Winfrey get on the inside? Because there's going to be so much attention on those guys rushing the passer on the outside. Does he get a lot of one-on-one blocking on the inside? Does he get a lot of opportunity, first of all? And then same with Isaiah Thomas, versatility. Is he a guy that can play inside and outside in the NFL like he did in college? I'll be interested to watch both of those guys.
Yeah, a lot of guys on the cut line. You got, 7th rounder plus undrafted free agents in both Marquise Hayes, Tyrese Robinson, then Kennedy Brooks, Jeremiah Hall, Burkich already on his second team in Green Bay. So those would be the obvious ones. But the guy I'm actually looking forward to seeing and hearing the reports is Nick Bonito, because he was a guy that the Broncos, when they drafted him, you immediately heard, you heard through the entire draft process, if Nick Bonito's anywhere close, the Broncos are going to go get him. They love him. You immediately heard the GM day one in the draft press conference that's like, hey, we're going to teach him all the stuff he didn't learn at Oklahoma. And there's a hole to fill, right? They took Von Miller. They traded him over to Hooves Rams so they could go win a Super Bowl. Shout out to Von Miller. Now in Buffalo, after doing the flirty thing of, I love the Broncos, always with them, I'm going to come back and sign with them immediately. There's a massive hole there that Nick Bonito can step into in year one and not be Von Miller, but start and be a huge contributor to a Broncos team that went out and got Russell Wilson and fancies themselves a contender to win the AFC West. Will they do that? No, but Nick Bonito can still be a huge, huge piece of that. So I'm interested to see what he does in the preseason, especially to see if they can get him up to speed immediately.
Yeah, along similar lines, I'm really interested in Brian Asamoah too with the Vikings, just because some of these guys, you feel really confident they're going to be NFL players. Some of these other ones, you're not sure. And I feel like Asamoah is kind of in the middle as far as I could totally see him being an NFL player, but also he needs to get off to a good start and latch on somewhere. You don't want to see him being passed around, trying to get an opportunity, kind of like a Curtis Bolton or something on a different team every year kind of a thing. I feel like Asamoah is going to be fun to watch, interesting, because it's just his natural intangibles, his speed and stuff like that. It feels like an NFL player. So I'm very curious to see if he can carve out a role for himself there with the Vikings. And, obviously these preseason games, that's what they're for, is these guys trying to earn. Obviously people tune in to see the stars, but they don't care about preseason at all. The stars of the league, obviously, they play one series and they're done. The preseason games are for the rookies and for these guys trying to get spots on the team. So But yeah, interested in all these guys. Jeremiah Hall with the Giants, and out there with the Broncos, Delarrin Turner-Yell as well. Just what kind of a role can they carve out for themselves right away? So going to be very fun and interesting to watch throughout this spring. All those guys drafted this year, so we'll keep keeping tabs on all of them, as well as obviously the veteran guys like Hoop said, like Baker, obviously, and some of these other ones. So there you have it. NFL is right around the corner as well. Football is very, very close. The Hall of Fame, it's funny. We talked about camp is next week. That's also when the Hall of Fame game is, which is like the worst sporting event to watch ever. But everybody does because it's the first football thing, and it's next Thursday. And so Hall of Fame, we have some kind of football in just over a week, which is crazy. We're getting there. It's shifting. Are the Raiders in the Hall of Fame game, Ryan? Am I imagining that?
It's all I know is Jacksonville's playing. I've tried.
I thought it was Raiders Jaguars. I could be right. It is definitely Jaguars. You're right about that.
Yeah, I've tried to shun expectations of McDaniels and the Raiders. Like I've just tried to put that as far away as possible. But yeah, it's Jags Raiders.
There you go. So you get to see your Raiders right away.
And the Raiders favored by 1.5. Get it going. As
people know, if they listen to me regularly, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, and I saw a projection of the day from USA Today that had them having the worst record in the league. So excitement all around for me heading into 2022 season here. Number one pick, maybe. Let's go. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, football is really close. That's the gist of it. We're excited, and we're getting there. Preseason and fall camp next week. All right, we're going to take a timeout here. Yeah.
Josh, you know what else is really close? Basketball. We'll get into that a little bit in the next segment.
Yeah,
I said basketball. I know it's crazy, but stick with us. Trust me, it's coming.
Basketball. Porter Moser and that basketball team getting ready to go. Also, OU Nebraska basketball is set. We'll talk about that. We got lots of stuff to talk about. Lots of other sports: basketball, baseball, softball, all staying busy. We'll talk about all those sports next on the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 133 on this final Wednesday of July. We'll get through some other sports here, then we'll send you on your merry way. Going to start with some basketball, like Hoop teased there at the end of the second segment. First off, Oklahoma and Nebraska set for the ESPN Invitational Thanksgiving Day, 4 o'clock tip in Orlando. So that's just super. Everybody loves a nice OU Nebraska basketball game right when they're eating their Thanksgiving dinners. That's going to be electric television. So let's just go ahead and get a baseball game, a softball matchup. Let's have just a full-blown OU Nebraska series this year. That's part of a tournament there in Orlando.
Aren't they not playing on Friday too?
Saturday. They play Friday. The tournament runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday off for football basically, and then Sunday.
If you're rolling OU Nebraska out around Thanksgiving, play it on Black Friday. Miss the layup.
Yeah, it's an ESPN Invitational tournament. It's got a lot of decent to okay basketball programs, and OU Nebraska played in the first round down in Orlando. That's the weekend that OU plays at Texas Tech in Lubbock, so we're going to be busy. As Ryan and I were texting about it the other day, and we're like, all right, Ross Lovelace, this is your time to shine covering some basketball because we're going to be in Lubbock that weekend. So I don't know, but when OU is in that tournament and against Nebraska, we now know for sure that they'll have Grant Sherfield from Nevada. He got his waiver. Big win for Oklahoma, obviously. You need Sherfield and Bamasil. You need them to be competitive and try to make the tournament this year. We don't know about Bamasil yet for sure, as far as I know, but Grant Sherfield gets his waiver in the Nevada kid, so a big win for OU basketball there.
Yeah, they don't have the Bamasil waiver yet, but they'll get it. I'm pretty confident the NCAA is handing out waiver like Christmas.
I really haven't seen anybody get denied. So.
Yeah, everybody gets a waiver. This is why the NCAA is washing its hands of so many things, and they're changing the rules, and they're saying, let's just do this. They're tired of having to look at and approve every one of these waivers because they know what's going to happen if they say to any one of these kids that sends in a waiver, no, you can't play, waiver denied. The public's going to scorn them again. And so the NCAA is just tired of it. And instead of rubber stamping all these waivers, they're saying, you know what? We don't need a one-time transfer rule. Transfer as many times as you guys want. They're actually considering that now. So that's something that, having him as part of the team in 2020, Sherfield is part of the team in 22. absolute necessity. 19 points a game scorer last year. He's a guy that can be an electric scorer. You know, you lose the scoring and leadership and playmaking that they did through the transfer portal. You better add some back, and that's what they've done here.
Yeah, and something that we kind of talked about to the tail end of the season, after the season, teams can be more athletic this year, I think, just especially in the backcourt. So getting Sherfield, and then when Bama still happens, assuming that goes along as everyone expects, should be good. And again, those guys not coming if they didn't think they were going to get their waivers as well. So like Hoove said, NCAA rules committees put that forward of just make it a school thing. As long as the schools can get the academics sorted out, then transfer as many times as you can. Don't worry about us. So the NCAA can go to doing other things like not punishing schools that they deliver level 1 allegations to. Just at least they're good at delivering those level 1 allegations. Also, pretty sure that USA England in the World Cup is going to be on that Black Friday there the day after OU basketball. So yeah, Ryan will be out. Big Ross weekend as far as the OU basketball beat.
It's the World Cup being right in the middle of that's the worst.
Disaster.
That's the worst. I'm not even like as big of a soccer guy as you, Ryan, obviously, but I like the World Cup. It should be now. It should be when there's not that much going on. This is like when you want it. So yeah, that Thanksgiving into Christmas, terrible. Just terrible.
Well, same with summer basketball. I mean, congrats on getting to travel to Spain and France and play some basketball games. They report on August 2nd. They play on August 4th. They play again on August 6th, and then they play again on August 9th. That's great. I'm glad you guys are going over there and having a great time. That's in the middle of the first week of college football training camp. We're going to be very busy. These are just exhibitions, but no, that'll be a cool event. This team's new and young and inexperienced, and transfers, and the coaching staff is still relatively new. You look at the guys that Porter Moser had to hire to his coaching staff. This team's got to build chemistry, and they got to build chemistry fast. The best way to do that is to sequester yourself in a hotel room, on a bus, in another country. You know what I mean? To force the issue that, hey, you guys either be friends and get good chemistry and get along and get to know each other really well, or this season's going to be a terrible season. So I think this is just what they need, is a trip to Europe. But boy, what terrible timing to get it reported on the website, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I've said before, I am looking forward to this basketball season. I think they are going to be fun to watch, and it's an interesting team. Second year of Moser. This feels like Moser's first real team, because obviously last year he kind of just picked up what he could. Basically, he had like no roster to even work with. And so that's going to be fun to watch for sure. I'm surprised we haven't got a schedule yet, because remember we joked about it, and last year it dropped right during Big 12 Media Days. Yeah. And so now we sit here 2 weeks removed from Media Days. We still don't have a schedule. So I don't know if basketball's playing when. We have a few games, obviously, little bits and pieces, Big 12 SEC and Big East and stuff like that, this tournament in Nebraska, but we don't have the full thing.
Yeah. By the way, how perfect is our man Tanner Grove going to be in Spain and France with that beard? He's going to look like, he could be sitting at a French bistro with a cigarette in one hand. And, I got to get a visual. They better have cameras, and they better take lots of pictures. Brent, you hear me? You better take lots of pictures on that trip. I want to see Tanner Groves in a little French beret with the little like a mime shirt, maybe working with a mime or doing some of that stuff. I don't know.
Him and Jake can be the two tallest guys there by like a foot, as far as like any French resident. Yeah, that's going to be a scene out there. Hopefully we'll hear from them from afar how that's going. But yeah, bad timing, like who said. We're going to be knee deep in a Venables 3-hour presser, I'm sure, here pretty soon. So not great timing on that. Flipping over to softball. Lots of housekeeping with softball here. We'll talk about the really cool news with the WPF in just a second, but some other housekeeping things. A few things. Jocelyn Allo, Big 12 Athlete of the Year. Again, duh. Yeah, what else is new? Does she even care at this point how many things she's won? Does she care even a little about that one? Fale View, former Sooners, going to North Carolina on the staff. So you had a little Tobacco Road there with Sydney Romero is at Duke. And then Grace Lyons on the U.S. national team for this Japan series they're about to play, which is next week. She's the fourth Sooner on there. And this is going to be her first time playing for the U.S. national team. So a few little housekeeping items there.
Another breaking news on Grace. Like you said when we started the podcast, after we get started, breaking news is going to happen right off the top, and it did. First segment, I got this email from the NCAA, from the Big 12 actually. Grace Lyons has been nominated for the NCAA Woman of the Year. So there's 2 representatives from the Big 12, Ayoka Lee, the Kansas State basketball player, and Grace Lyons, the softball player at OU. Basically, every school nominates a male of the year, man of the year, and woman of the year. So you got 350 kids female, 350 kids male, right? Not a big deal. Congrats on your school nominating you. It's a big deal. It's cool. But Grace has been nominated by the Big 12 Conference. So all of a sudden that has been pared down to a very small sample size, the conference players of the year. She's one of 2 from the Big 12. So congrats to her. She's one of my favorites.
Ayoka Lee, who dropped like 70 on OU.
63 or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember that it was a lot.
Yeah, at one point in the second half, it was Ayoka Lee 54, Oklahoma 51, and I was like, yikes. Not what you want. But no, very cool for Grace Lyons. It'll be interesting just to see following this team the last couple of years. It's been so, like, we know the team's incredible. We're not making, like, you're not able to make the case, are they the best softball team to ever play unless the team top to bottom is incredible. You know what I mean? But as Jocelyn Alo kind of steps out into the WPF, which we'll talk about here in a minute, who are going to kind of be those people that step up and kind of become the faces of the program here, as there's going to be a lot of transfers coming in that need to get acclimated, a bunch of freshmen and young players that are, stepping into bigger roles. Grace Lyons immediately off the jump going to be one of those candidates, as is Kinsey Hansen, who we've talked about here the last couple of episodes, as she's won a gold medal for Team USA herself.
Yeah, we teased it a little bit there. The WPF, which we talked about before, new softball league, Lauren Chamberlain's the commissioner. It's based out of OKC. They're getting a team in OKC, the Oklahoma City Spark. I love the colors, by the way. The blue and yellow is sweet. And they're coming to OKC. They're going to play at Hall of Fame Stadium. So the first expansion team added. I assume that this league's going to try and add a bunch of teams.
Not confirmed that they're at Hall of Fame Stadium. There's not a stadium spot.
Okay, I thought they were.
Lauren Chamberlain is pushing for it to be at Hall of Fame Stadium, but Lauren Chamberlain, she was on with Chisholm and I yesterday on the franchise, and she basically said Hall of Fame Stadium is the one that makes sense. USA Softball is a founding member of the league, so she's hoping, but nothing hammered out. She even threw out Norman as a possibility of a place that they could play here in year one.
That'd be cool. I mean, Marina Hines is about to be vacant pretty soon, so that's going to be up for grabs. Yeah, this is cool, obviously. I mean, my main takeaway was just, if this isn't just an OU and OSU alumni team, and what are we doing? Because that's all you need to do here to make this thing successful.
Yeah, and yet you've got Rogers State that won a Division II national championship here in Claremore, and you've got Oklahoma City, who won an NAIA national championship. You got Murray, that's a great softball program. I think they finished in the Final Four. I can't remember what their finish was. Every level of collegiate softball in the Sooner State, in the state of Oklahoma, produces high-level players. So, yeah, a ton of TU has been good for 20 years under John Barkfeld when he was here. They've dropped off a little bit since he went to Oklahoma State, but boy, everybody in this state plays high-level softball. So, yes, Sooners are at the top. Cowgirls are a couple steps below probably. But I think every college program in this state, or at least the elite ones, could be a feeder team for this professional team. And that's so cool. Think about how this sport has grown. I hope this latches on, and I hope people go to the games, especially if there's a lot of familiar faces. I really hope it takes off. Just the way the game itself has grown, it seems like Oklahoma has been ground zero for the growth of softball in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there need to be a lot of former OU players on that team, so we can get the rubber stamp from the boss on the call here for Ryan to slide over into the press box after the World Series for some Oklahoma City action next year. But here's the other really cool thing, too, which I found interesting. Tina and Robert Floyd, they're the owners of this team. Tina Floyd's kind of been who's been rolled out alongside Lauren Chamberlain. They are longtime supporters of Oklahoma softball financially. Big time supporters, as well as, just being in the seats, being fans. So it's not like the WPF was like, hey, we need a team in Oklahoma City. We're headquartered in Oklahoma City. Let me go get some suit from the West Coast whose whole goal is to come in and like run a business, right? Like obviously you're trying to make money, all this stuff. You can't just have a successful league if you're hemorrhaging for years. But for this to be a locally owned, someone that is in the Oklahoma softball community, understands what softball fans in this state want, understands all of that. I think that adds an extra layer of this thing's going to be run the right way. It's going to be run by people who want to see this state have an incredibly successful pro softball team.
Yeah, right now, obviously, the WPF is just 2 teams, right? It's just like a traveling roadshow. Essentially, they go around and just kind of, play games in various places. How many teams, Ryan? You may know, you may not. Are they looking to add a bunch of teams, or is OKC the only team they're adding, or is it going to be a few more? Do you have any idea?
I asked Lauren this yesterday when she was with us on the radio, and she basically said that right now, conservatively, the expansion plan is a couple of teams a year just to make sure you're not adding a bunch of teams that aren't going to run properly. Now, she said, obviously, if there are 7 people that roll up and have a sound business plan to make this thing rock and roll, then they can figure that out. But Lauren, she didn't put a cap on it as far as I only want to get to 8 or I want to get to 30. She just basically said that growth and getting a ton of teams and making the league grow in a way that's healthy for the teams and the sport is something that she said keeps her up at night. So sure. Definitely, even if it's just 3 teams next year, I wouldn't expect that to be the case over the next coming years. And you've got some really legendary, the Chicago Bandits are huge. There's a reason that Northwestern softball is really good, because the Chicago Bandits for a long time were a team in that area that, like we mentioned, everyone around that Illinois area got a lot of really great youth softball because of that. They're not in the fold. I'd like to see them come back. That could be an option. I don't know the business side of all that or whatever, but there are a couple spots around the country that have had teams in the past that should be able to come aboard at some point.
Well, that'd be cool. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see what players go over there. Ala's already in the league, so it seems natural that you trade her over, that you make it happen if you're able to get her over to the OKC team, and what other OU and, like we were saying, OSU and all the other state alumni could go play for that team. It'd be pretty cool, I think, whenever that time does come. Wrapping up here with a little bit of baseball. Skip Johnson doing a very nice job with the portal. Kind of all last year, it feels like a little bit. The big one the other day, Virginia reliever Blake Bales. This is probably your closer next year. He was legit. He missed last season, I believe, with shoulder surgery. I saw that. I don't know if that's for sure. He definitely missed last season. I don't know if that's the exact injury. But in 2021, he was one of the best relievers in the country, period. He was 0.71 ERA with 54 strikeouts in 38 innings in 2021. He was one of the finalists for the Stopper of the Year from the Baseball Writers Association, which is one of the best relievers, closers in the sport. And he's transferring over to Oklahoma. So that's a really good bullpen get for OU. The bullpen is a big question mark. It was last year. And you just lost Trevin Michael along with a couple other guys who didn't even use a whole bunch, but still a couple other guys, Ramos and Godman, as well as Chaz Martinez. They're all gone. So getting some bullpen is needed. And also sounds like, I mentioned this last week, Cale Davis, who transferred from Oklahoma State, he was drafted. The word on the street is that he's not going to sign and that he's still going to come to OU. So that's another huge win for the bullpen if that happens. So this is a good job here from Skip Johnson, though, to get some arms that they need.
Trevin Michael came in from Lamar. Is that right?
Lamar, yeah.
So to get a closer from the transfer portal 2 years in a row seems like a solid business model if you're Skip Johnson, right? I mean, that may be the way that'll, a closer is such a specific role. And if you can find one guy in the transfer portal to do that job for you, that might be almost like a quarterback position or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we know Skip's already an ace recruiter. Now all he has to do is grab that graphic they've put out there of, hey, have you seen how many guys we've had drafted, pitchers specifically, over the last couple of years?
Pitchers, yeah.
Put that up against anyone in the country. Come on down. And as he says, looky here, who they'll end up finding.
Right. Yeah, right. Bullpen looking pretty solid considering the state of it last year. And like I said, you lose Michael, who was so good for you. A couple of big arms added there, it looks like. And a little bonus one, too, just last night. Junior college guy, Barrett Reebok, who we've talked about before. They've been very good in the JUCO, finding talent. Can I interest you in these numbers from Reebok? 423 average And then he had 58 steals in 54 games. 58 steals, and he batted .423. Not a ton of power, just 4 homers, 39 ribbies, but 58 steals, and he batted .423. My God. Getting on base a lot and stealing.
Sounds like a chaos candidate to me.
Yeah, big time. So a little bonus addition there for Oklahoma, and it feels like, roster's in pretty good shape, all things considered. You lost a ton, but, a couple of nice ads. You feel good about the young guys coming back. Those 3 freshmen in the lineup. There's some reason to be optimistic, I think, about, where the team is positioned going into next year. All right, I think that's it. Nice and tidy show. Like I said, last one before fall camp starts next week. Gentlemen, it's pretty much time. Are we ready mentally? Because the season is rapidly approaching.
No, not ready mentally. Still need another week.
Well, you guys had the hell summer of going the distance in Omaha and then not really getting any time off. Thankfully, I think I'm a little bit closer to being ready to rock and roll. Scout the dog for sure is ready to go. She's already daydreaming about camp battles, as you saw.
Hey, I love it. It's a labor of love. Obviously, we love football. I love covering the team. It's just a lot. And the travel schedule this year is more arduous. And so it's hovering over me like a cloud of this is happening soon. Excited, but it's also like once it starts, it's pretty much until Christmas. You don't breathe. So I'm looking forward to it, but also a little scared of it. So excited though. Football's coming up very, very soon. All right, that's it for us. Thank you so much for listening. You can be sure and catch next week's show, which, like we said, fall camp starts next week. We have OU's local media day next week as well, so we'll have to keep an eye out for when media day is as far as when we do our next show, but keep an eye out for it. We'll wrap up media day or preview media day. Again, it depends on when the schedule is. You can catch that show, all the shows, on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners podcast. Also post on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the player list on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. For Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys next time.